Welcome to the Transformational Leadership Podcast, where we empower your influence from the inside out. Welcome, Steve.
Hello, Pete. Welcome, everybody. Excited for this episode. But before we start, I need to tell you something, Pete.
Okay.
For those listening, some of you may remember that I actually have a reading disability. I'm a visual, tactile, kinesthetic learner, so I can read words, but I don't always comprehend or understand what I'm reading. So it also affects the way that I read because I miss words. My eyes focus on one word rather than the whole sentence, all sorts of different.
Well,
And so that also affects the way that I write. So some of you may know that when I wrote my book, Free to Be Me, it's actually a co-written with my wife because she's the writer. And so, but one of the things that I've been struggling with is getting the audio book out in a way that doesn't sound robotic or whatever. And, a lot of people would have to read their books to do the audio. I can't do that, okay,
mhm.
because I skip all the words and everything. Well, I met somebody recently who offered to clone my voice, okay, and wow, I didn't know understand the whole process of it, but man, it's sounding fantastic. We're about halfway through the process, and all of a sudden, it's given me so much hope about other material I can do now.
There you go.
So that whatever I write, it's actually read in the right format. That's AI working for you, as opposed to taking over for you. So I just wanted to. I don't know what you think about that, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, I'm happy for you. You'll be able to crank out a lot more Steve goodness. So
Oh,
that'll be great.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, what's the transformation tip this week, Pete?
Okay, well, this comes from an author, James Clear. He wrote a blockbuster book about habits
Yeah.
called Atomic Habits. He said, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems."
Oh, that's really true. Say that again.
Yeah. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Yeah.
And I love that quote. I have proven it in a bad way many times, because you can start out with great intentions, a lot of motivation, but if you don't build something in place to keep that momentum that you don't have to think about every time, you just can follow it, then you're
And,
on your way.
and that's where a lot of visionaries, people who have kind of visionary ideas and dreams kind of fall short because they have a great idea, and they just think it's easy to create it, but they're often really terrible at knowing how to put systems in place.
Yeah, it's hard to find someone who's visionary and process oriented.
Mhm.
They're
So,
typically
yeah.
one or the other.
And,
Sometimes they're both, which is
yeah, and,
great.
and, and often when you talk to a visionary and they then talk to you about process, it's so conceptual and so
We'll just do this and this and this.
so it makes it sound like it'll happen tomorrow when actually it's going to take several weeks, months, or whatever. So, and that's really what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about systems and the question, uh, in life, there's so many different systems that you can have a system in your family, you can have a system obviously at work and even in your own lives. And the question is, and this is what this episode is: your system stagnant? Is it actually not? Is it now working against you, or can you be adaptive with your system? And I don't. I every leader, right? They want to work smarter, hopefully not harder, and but for most organizations I've found that they create systems that have worked in the past, but may not be helping them in the current because there's so many variables that take place. Especially when you first start out, many systems were built for a smaller or simpler version, uh, because you were starting up. And if you start growing, scaling, or even if you start failing, okay, sometimes it's not the people, it's the system. Okay. And the question isn't whether you have a system, it's whether your system is actually helping you grow or whether actually it's holding you back and sabotaging you. And just an example, one of the biggest discussions right now is AI, right, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, people are like, some of people are afraid of it. Some of people are uh, feeling like, I don't know, it's too big for me. But if you're able to take bite the bullet, you can begin to realize AI can be an incredible way to help you with your systems.
Well, Steve, you know that I coach a lot of IT professionals and CIOs, and another problem with AI is people getting excited about technology, running forward with it without considering a systems approach. They're
Yes.
just thinking like tools and tricks and tips and speed, but they're not thinking about the people. How are people going to have to use this? Is it repeatable? Is it safe as far as security, cybersecurity goes? There's a lot of things that go into a system.
I like what you're saying there because it's like you're right. A lot of people think this is fun. You know, they've been practicing with Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever on the side, and they're creating nice presentations, this that, and the other, which is great on a very basic level. But what we're talking about here is architecting. Okay, it's like we need to look at a big picture and architect how a system goes and how you get to the bigger outcomes. And that's really where I think we want to go in our discussion today. So Pete, just kind of help us understand what we need to do to begin to understand this whole question of systems.
Yeah, well, so see, we're going to make this really practical. And the first thing I want to do is piggyback off the last thing we just said. The reason systems can get old and crusty is they're not easy to put together. You put a lot of thought and work and tweaking over time to get this thing fine-tuned to get the results that you
Mhm.
want. And if you're successful, that's great. And we hope y'all are. And then we don't mess with that, right? Don't mess with that system because it'll affect our profits. But when you're in that too long, it starts to erode you, and it's gradual. You might not even see it, and before you know it, you could be bypassed, and everybody's work again. We said working harder instead of smarter. There are new tools coming out all the time. It's not just technology, by the way. There's different ways, different management philosophies. Gen Z is expecting certain things differently. And so to adapt, that's really the key word, I think, today is adapting. And and when we get into the practical section, we'll talk about how to do that. You can't constantly adapt because then you don't have a system anymore. you're you don't have anything repeatable.
And I want a word here. I want to talk about of environmental awareness. Okay. Not that you have to keep change, like you said, not you have to keep changing with every change because then you'll be like a ping pong ball being knocked back and forth, right? But to begin to see trends, to begin to see patterns, to begin to see things that are outside your norm, okay, and not to be afraid of them. And then begin to ask the question, if this is the direction we're going, how does the system work here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so
go.
Steve, there's two things. I say this every week or every episode. It does not matter where you're on the org chart.
Hmm.
Okay, if you have influence, you're a leader. And in this series that we're doing in this set of three episodes, this affects like everybody in an organization. So, what is your part in this? So, pay attention. And then second, hey, we're using the word system a lot. Let's just like define that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say it's a repeatable process to get to a desired outcome.
Yeah.
It can be a combination of people, technology, documentation. Once it's established, we want everyone to follow it,
Yeah.
right? But here's the rub: these have a shelf life.
Mm.
Okay. And so what was cutting edge at one point can become obsolete if we're not paying attention. So periodically need to revisit those.
I love this, Pete, because and I want to make it like kind of a distinction, because let's talk about there's a difference between what we call systems and structures, okay, and
Mm-hmm.
they often go
Yes.
together, okay. So the system is basically, as you described, it's a repeatable process, but it's actually, if you think about a flow chart, it's like getting from A to Z, or sorry, that's my English coming out, A to Z,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay, and all the component parts that get you and all the different ways in order to get to the final outcome. And it's a process. Okay. Um, Now, the structure is where it's more about people, where people fit within the system. Now, one of the key things here is never build a system around a person unless it's short term. So if you've got a short term project, you can say Pete has these incredible talents. Let's build the system around him in order to enable him to be successful in what he's doing. But when you're an organization that's thinking long term, big picture, never build a system around a person, okay? Because if that person gets hit by a bus, okay, a CEO friend of mine used to say, "Oh gosh, I wish that founder would stop saying that because I feel it's going to happen to me." So he reversed it and said, "What if I win the lottery?" Okay, and that made him feel more positive. But if somebody moves on or somebody moves from the system and you've built it around them, you're in trouble.
Well, Steve, this is a real core issue with startups, and that's a big part of my background. When you're moving really fast and trying to find your fit, and you're reinventing frequently, um, it is about people, and it is about trying things. And oftentimes, and there's books written about this, by the way. There's a classic called "Crossing the Chasm," which is when you're gone from, okay, we figured out the company, we're making some money. If you really, really want to scale it, you have to put systems in place, and people's personalities kind of get factored out of that. Well, if you've been deeply emotionally involved in building up your startup, you don't want to let go of that. It's the family feel and everything. But in order to make that leap and get everything systematized and simplified too, by the way, it's a big change in mentality, and not everyone can make that adjustment.
Yeah, and it is a big adjustment, but I think the other thing that's really important to say here is that you build your system first before you build your structure. Okay. And what I mean by that is when you create the flow and the processes, and then you look at the resources of the people you have, you then know where they fit, but then it also shows you the gaps, or it may show you the overload. And then it begins to help you reset what you actually need to create efficiency and effectiveness. And that's why systems are so important, because ultimately they're there to help you create that efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing I want to talk here is that people sometimes get a little scared of new systems.
Oh,
Okay.
there's Steve. I told you I have a lot of IT background. I can tell you stories of teams of people that will sabotage a change to a system because they've linked their career security and even their retirement based on a certain computer system, like a mainframe or something. And if anybody tries to touch that, they'll and they're good at sabotaging things
Mhm.
because they'll do it, under the radar. And it's that's what keeps a lot of, especially large enterprise companies, that's what keeps them stuck.
And what you need to understand, about 80% of the population do not like change. Okay, they are not naturally adaptive. But if you want to be able to scale, grow as a leader, you need to have that adaptive thinking. I was talking with a CEO of a multi-billion dollar company, one of my clients, and they had created incredible systems, obviously, to become that successful. Okay, and it's all digital, computerized, or whatever. But the AI is coming along, and we had this fantastic for about 2 or 3 seconds, my fantastic discussions around how AI could help and advance what they were doing, creating greater efficiency, etc. And so I said, I think you really need to go on a course. And so she went on a course, and it was fantastic. She said, "Oh my gosh, we could do all these things." Okay. So she then got the executive group together uh, and sat with them and said, "Okay, let's talk AI." And she said, "We could do this, and this, and it was like deer in headlights with the executive team. And then the one person said, I don't want to be unkind, but our current systems, the way they're set up, cannot integrate with AI. So I suggest that we just keep our current system." And at that moment, you wanted to fire that person on the spot because they weren't thinking adaptive. They were thinking of holding their territory and being comfortable in the territory that they know. But long term, it would sabotage the effectiveness of the company.
Yes, Steve, I once heard that one of the definitions of leadership is helping people walk into a better vision of the future.
Hmm.
And
I like.
there's a lot of convincing that has to happen for people to accept change. I don't think people are afraid of change. They're afraid of an unknown future. And so there's just like a lot of work there. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a break here. And when we come back, we're going to look practically, how do we create systems? Well, welcome back. We've been talking about systems. Okay, organizational systems, personal systems, and whether they're stagnant or whether they're adaptive. Now, obviously, by now you should realize that we want you to begin to have an adaptive mindset to create adaptive systems. And so we're going to give you maybe 4 ways to begin to create an adaptive system. All right. The first one is to document before you optimize. Okay. Now, you can't improve or adapt or create something if you haven't defined it. So the first thing you need to do is start by writing down what you actually do, not what you think you do. Okay? That's
That is a
another.
really good reality check.
It's really getting down to the facts and the bare bones. Be concrete here. It's really important. Or don't necessarily hope you start writing things that you're hoping you wish you could do. Okay? That's not the first thing. First, see what's working, okay? And see how you want to document it. I was actually talking to a client yesterday, and it's an amazing organization. It's probably about 50 years old and most of the employees have been there 30, 40 years. Okay, which is remarkable because we know there's such incredible turnover. But so I said, I need you, but they're moving into transition. And I said, look, document why people are staying. Understand what I call the fractal. What is the common theme as you look at all the systems that you've put together that create and this desire to stay in the company and keep your best people. Okay.
Mhm.
And so that's the thing I'm talking about. Document it before you optimize.
Yeah. And if you're a visionary creative leader, this is probably not the best activity for you to get involved in. Okay. You want people that just like really concrete, bare bones, and just want to find out what's actually
Yeah,
happening.
share the vision and the why, and then let everybody else
Yeah.
put it together.
Yeah. Okay. The second step is to build SOP. That's a standard operating procedure with your team. So standard operating procedure. We're going to standardize how we operate and put a procedure in place to support that. Okay. Standardize means everyone's going to follow it. Now, you don't want to do that for your team. You want to do it with them. Okay. Because this is classic. And frankly, it's a little bit arrogance is people in management, senior management, leadership, executive leadership think they know better at times, and different. That's what I want to say is like you have a certain type of intelligence for broad leadership. People on the front lines are really really smart. They're just smart with their craft. They know what's going on. They know why a certain process is or isn't working. The people that are dealing with your customers or
Yes.
your partners, they know a whole lot more than you think they do. They're often afraid to tell you because if it's an unhealthy structure, they won't speak up because they think they're going to get punished for it. But you let them work this because plus they're the ones who are going to have to follow it. And if you put something together that is unrealistic, they're just going to get super frustrated. And guess what? They're not going to do it, and they're going to find a different way to make sure it gets done. So might as well like start with them because they're that's the source of truth.
I can't agree with you more. Okay, because they're the people who implement actually understand what's working and not working, right? And if you kind of come, like you said, with a know-it-all attitude, they're not going to share with you because they're afraid that you're going to reprimand them or do whatever and just think they're stupid or something like that, or they're putting the pin in your bubble, you
Or
know.
or if they're shy,
Yeah.
they'll just feel shot down. That's no
Okay.
fun.
And so the key is to when you're collaborating to respect what the person is doing and understand their expertise, like you said. So, and the other thing is a lot of people in the SOP, we've created systems where people have all the knowledge in their head. They've never actually transferred it down.
Yep.
And those types of people, you need them to say, could you create me a document and get what you know here onto a piece of paper so that we can
And the
collaborate?
real test of that is can someone else actually follow it? Because even when they put it out of their head, there's still chunks floating
Yeah.
around.
I mean, my wife always says to me, tell me, how did you do that? And I just tell her, and she goes, I still don't get it.
Yep, yep.
I'm so
Yeah, yeah,
conceptual, so yeah.
yeah, yeah. Really important on all this. I once had a founder, and we were selling things over the internet, but the back end system financial was all done by hand. It would take like 20 minutes to process one simple order. And that gets really expensive because you're paying for people's time. So we did some research, came up with, oh, here's an e-commerce system that we can put in place. It's going to cost this much. It'll take about 3 months to implement. And he was so far removed from all that, he shot it down. And I know, like, we would have saved money within 2 months. It would have paid for itself.
Hmm,
We actually laid that case out, but didn't want to hear it. And, we needed a founderectomy, and it just happens.
that's good.
Okay. Next point is you need to review and check back in on the systems that you created on a pretty regular basis. Now, there's a balance here. Okay. You can't reinvent something every 3 months or every quarter. Okay. That gets expensive. You don't have the capacity for that. But putting in the calendar times when you'll review and ask, hey, what's working, what's not working. And by the way, this doesn't always mean we're going to scrap and rewrite. It just means maybe it just needs to be tweaked, or we found something out, like it used to work before, this part of it isn't working anymore, or we made some assumptions that didn't really happen, and so how do we adjust? So it just putting that into a regular rhythm is it's just needed.
I love that. I think regular check-ins will help you long term to be able to keep the curve going up. Okay. If you some like I said, some people get too comfortable with their systems and they don't see the erosion before it happens because they're not checking in. So that's great.
Steve, I once heard of a company that would do an employee survey, and it was anonymous. By the way, if you're going to do this, make it anonymous and really make it anonymous. People don't
Very
trust.
anonymous.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, they would say the prompt was, "I can't believe we still blank."
That's
And
great. I like that.
it's a real. Yeah, I think so too, especially for frontline workers. I can't believe we still.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the last move that to build adaptive systems is actually adapt when the market moves. Okay. The one thing you can't often control is what's happening outside.
Yeah.
Okay. And there can be things that happen globally, recently with all the wars in the Middle East and everything else. Tons of my clients who need the Straits of Hormuz to get their stuff through
Mm.
suffering. Okay. And if you are trying to keep to the same system, it's not going to work because you've got a variable that's happening and it becomes very difficult. So your system that you're creating should be flexible. It needs to be responsive to outside forces, okay, and not immune to them, okay. And this is where you need to be flexible and not rigid. Rigidity is not a strength. If you just keep thinking this is the way we do it, okay, you're gonna get yourself really
Rigidity shatters
yeah,
when a force hits it, right? But
yeah.
flexibility absorbs it and can respond.
There's a phrase that we've been using that rigidity isn't strength, it's fragility in disguise. Okay. And
Yeah, because it sounds like you're sticking to your guns, and it sounds like you're
yeah,
confident and you know what you're doing, but eh,
yeah. Well, one of the biggest things we came out of a few years ago was COVID,
yeah.
right? I mean, hey, that affected everybody globally, right? I was working with a client during that time, and they're a major manufacturer of clothing lines all over the world. But the moment that COVID hit, this one CEO went, huh, we have the materials to create really good hygienic masks.
Uh-huh.
And so they then suddenly adapted what they were doing. So we can't produce here, but we can produce here. And they created a department and they got for example, they got a military contract
Oh
and
wow.
which is huge. But then they also created outstanding masks that, were filtered everything because they had the right resources and materials. And they made hundreds of millions over the COVID. Okay. Because they adapted their systems to stop
Great example. Yeah.
making this one thing. These people aren't going to buy these right now. Let's make this.
Yeah. That's
And
great. I love it.
it was fantastic.
Yeah. Love it.
So what's the transformation application this week, Pete?
Okay, so we're gonna land the plane here, start moving toward the end. So you heard the episode this week. What we'd like you to do is just identify one system in your organization. It doesn't need to be like a global ERP system. Okay, one operating system in your org that everybody knows is either broken or outdated, but it hasn't really been touched or upgraded. Okay, so
Mm.
start there. Name it out loud with your team and then just take one concrete step toward improving it. That could be the documenting it, right? Just writing down what it's currently doing, scheduling a review, drafting the SOP, right? But just move it off the back burner and start to address it. You may find, by the way, there are certain people that have a talent. They are process oriented, they are systems thinker, and they have a talent and they actually enjoy this stuff.
Yeah, and if you
Okay. And
find
if
one, they're a keeper.
yeah, they're a keeper and let them do it.
Yep.
Just let them do it. If you find somebody gets really energized by this, just let them actually lead this process. You still, of course, want to be involved, but just start with one thing.
Yeah,
That's your
yeah, because
challenge.
if you're a visionary leader, that's not your strength. Okay. Remember what we said earlier. Just give them the why and let them get on with it. Stop, don't tinker with them. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, remember, adaptive systems serve organizations to work smarter, okay, not harder. And the system isn't the ceiling, it's the floor from which you build from, okay? So always remember, as we've been doing throughout these podcasts, information plus application equals transformation. Well, Pete, always a pleasure. I'll see you at the next episode.
See you
Okay.
next episode.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye bye.